All right, Dad. How you doing?
Yeah, good, good. Sorry we couldn't be together. This is
Yeah,
a sort
yeah,
of making you get lemons, you make lemonade.
yeah. So we couldn't be together, so I thought we'd just record one digitally. I asked you to go on your Instagram and post a Q&A request, and we've got lots of questions. So here we are today answering your questions.
Indeed, I mean we're walking into the photographic forest, and so we've basically got a rough map, but we might go off the path
Yeah, yeah.
into the
I haven't actually
undergrowth.
seen the questions yet, so I'm sure some people's questions might lead to other questions and maybe some conversations. But yeah, so
Okay.
we'll just get straight into it. Do you still
Yeah.
walk around looking for shots when you're not working?
Oh, of course.
Yeah,
Quite often it happens when I'm driving in my car, and the windows of the car are like the frames, a camera frame, and so I'm constantly seeing pictures, most of which I can't take, because obviously, I mean, I have occasionally done it, but if I'm in stationary traffic, but you don't want to be touching your phone because that leads to nowhere good.
yeah.
And
You've crashed many of our cars, our family
absolutely.
cars.
With my partner Kay, I think she's really beautiful, and there have been sort of intimate moments. One time when she was in the bath, there was this amazing light, and obviously she's a very discreet and shy person, so it's not going to happen. I'm not going to be allowed to take a photograph. And so most of these photographs are untaken, unrealized. But the answer to the question is, of course. I mean, once you sort of become a kind of photographer and you kind of wear those clothes, you're constantly finding that it invades every aspect of your life. So you photographed your partners. I mean, you all got photographed all the time, and I don't think it'll ever stop.
Yeah, and he also added another little thing at the end: camera gear over composition. Just it's a statement. It's not a question, but I thought maybe you could just comment
Yeah,
on
I mean,
that real quick.
obviously, it's all about composition. It's
Okay.
all about the actual photograph, the creative genesis of something amazing, rather than the obsessive kind of need to fetishize equipment, which is of secondary concern, really. I mean, I like metally things. I like things that are well engineered, but that's a whole different kind of ballpark to the
Yeah,
actual creation of a visual artifact.
yeah, and you can tell from the channel. That's how we feel.
Mm.
We hardly ever really talk about gear, but um, yeah, okay. We're gonna just go through these because there's a lot of questions. But
Yeah.
someone's Tim Allen photogram has said
Mm.
this is probably a predictable question, but is there anybody you would still like to shoot? Straight away,
Yeah. I mean,
I might get you cancelled, but you do have a love for the Smiths and Morrissey.
yeah, I do like Morrissey. I mean, obviously, Morrissey. Just I'm obsessed with the Smiths. I photographed Mike Joyce and Andy Rourke back in the day for Select, the sort of bassist and drums of the Smiths. And as you know, I photographed Johnny Marr, but I'm obsessed with Morrissey. I made my way through his kind of almost unreadable autobiography,
Is
which
it
was published
unreadable?
by Penguin. Well, it was just really for the hardcore fans. I actually
Okay.
enjoyed it, but then in addition to him, there's people. I mean, I would have loved to have photographed Prince, who I was also a massive fan of.
You've seen Prince live though, haven't you?
Yeah, I mean, I was thinking the other day. I mean, there's a great video clip where Prince sort of upstages all these other musicians singing. They're doing the Travelling Wilburys. The band was the Travelling Wilburys with Tom
Something
Petty.
about making your guitar cry, right? I think I know the
Yeah,
song.
my
Yeah,
my my guitar gently weeps. It's a
yeah.
George
That's it. That's the
Harrison
one.
track,
Yeah,
and Prince upstages everybody else. And yeah, it just reminds me. I watch it every now and then, and it reminds me of how amazing he was.
yeah. I think the
So
story
Prince,
behind that. I think the story. I don't know if it's true. Someone correct me in the comments, but I think the Rolling Stones, the magazine, they put a list of like top 100
Rolling Stone
guitarists.
magazine.
Yeah, they yeah, not the Rolling Stones, but they put a list of the top 100 guitarists, and they didn't even mention Prince. And I think that
Yeah.
pissed him off, and he just did this most
Mm.
unbelievable like guitar solo, and
Yeah.
then throws his guitar and walks off stage.
Well, as working for the NME, I've seen a lot of live musicians, because you always go and see them live when you're doing, and then you do the portraits for the next day when you're working for the NME. So I'd go and see Nick Cave live, and then you do a portrait. Actually, I saw Nick Cave live when I was actually photographing somebody else that time, and actually photographed him on another occasion. But Prince is one of the few gigs that I actually paid to go and see, and I saw him 3 times. But in addition to Prince, the obvious king of the ball community, Larry David, I'd be interested in photographing him.
Still could
just
potentially.
Just people that I'm sort of that are part of my day to day, things that kind of make my life a happy place and an enjoyable one. So, for instance, Adam Buxton, we bumped into him at Collins from Radiohead's book launch, and I said to him,
real name dropping here.
Well, I said to him, I'd love to photograph. I'd like to photograph him because I love Ramble Chat. I love his podcast. Sure. And ironically, I was actually making a curry and listening to Ramble Chat, and we got a shout out, which is kind of a bit like I died and gone to heaven. It was a bit like Rupert Pupkin in King of Comedy, who has these sort of fantasies that he's famous and these famous people are talking about him. And to my utter disbelief, it actually happened.
Respect for like portrait photographers like this guy called Harry Borden. Do you know him?
I don't.
He's a great photographer who photographs loads of artists and musicians, and he's got a really cool YouTube blog that his son makes with him where he talks about...
He was at your book launch.
He was, that's right.
I met him. I had a great chat with him.
Yeah, he's brilliant. And he talks about photographing David Bailey, and it's really great. And I just think there's a sort of cool discipline to that. And there's a sort of an ambition and aiming for something that's kind of nothing to do really with... There's what he wants out of it. Never mind what the subject, what you're talking about, the subject, what they feel about it.
And I contacted you, didn't I? And I recorded it and played it.
I don't think I've ever seen you as excited as that. That was like
I was so excited. I was so excited.
Yeah. Okay, moving on. We got another one from Cement Stalk actually. Do you still walk around? Oh, wait, no, you sent me the same screenshot twice, Dad.
Oh, sorry.
Is Fred a photographer? Let's see his work with Dad's critique. I've had a few questions of this. I'm not a photographer. I like videography, but I will take some pictures, and I do think it would be a good video. You ripping into me, but I've always fiddled with your cameras, Dad, haven't I? So
yeah, I mean, you always like the metallic, the kind of they are kind of seductive things. Cameras, they're nice objects, and you would like when we were young, you were known as Fiddler Fred, weren't you?
It's gonna be a dodgy joke here.
But no, basically, you would just always pull things apart and try and work out how they were constructed. Yeah, and I actually thought. I remember you took a picture of our dog, Sandy, and the dog was leaping out of the water, and you caught it. It was a really good picture. It was when you were about 7, and I actually thought you could be a photographer, but it wasn't something you had as much enthusiasm for when you were younger. And
no, definitely.
I bought you that Sony mirrorless, which we use for the channel, with the intent that perhaps you could, like, you're going to America, aren't you? That's one of the reasons we're recording this, and you haven't actually brought. You haven't allowed for the fact that you needed to bring the camera with you, and I'm always saying, why don't you take pictures of your partner or what have you? But maybe it'll come to you.
Yeah, for sure. But... No, I'm interested, and maybe if we do that video, a friend of mine needed some headshots, and I said potentially he could come on the channel, and we both take headshots of him and then compare, and both maybe like. Leave me to it. Don't be in the room when I'm taking headshots, and then so I can instruct the model myself and do everything myself. But I've been on so many shoots with you now that I've just become mimicking you. But
well, a lot of it isn't necessarily about the technical stuff. It's just about if you come on a shoot with a good photographer, or making presumptions about my being a good photographer, but basically if you come with a professional photographer, you sort of see that they sort of are comfortable directing the subject and taking control of the situation, which is actually kind of more important than all the technical aspects. I mean, it's a given that you should be on top of the technical stuff, but that's a big part, is actually being able to talk with people, meet them, and immediately establish a rapport, and then act in such a way as you have a sort of an authority, and people listen to you, and you can manage a situation.
Well, someone actually commented on the Hillary Clinton video. Gift that never stops giving. That one.
Yeah.
He said he said why did you waste time? Why did you give her a book? She doesn't give a shit about your book. You're just there to press the button. Anyone can take a good picture, kind of thing. And I just like he also said like who gives a shit about rapport? And then I just said like that's why the picture isn't great. There is no rapport there. Like, but.
Yeah. I mean, sometimes a great picture can actually come out of a lack of rapport. Yeah. I mean, I think I've mentioned there's a shot I did of Terence Conran, which got into the equivalent of the National Portrait Gallery portrait competition years ago in the early 90s. And, you know, he's very brusque and a dominant man, and he gave me little time, and I just had a very strong visual idea. I shot him in front of this abstract painting, and he was puffing on this cigar. And the lack of rapport, the lack of connection, it still worked.
It helps, yeah. For sure.
Yeah, it was just an exercise in aesthetics rather than as a warm, connected portrait.
Yeah, makes sense. Anyway, moving on. Have you ever branched out into other forms of photography, like wildlife or well, you've done a bit of documentary.
I think initially when you start photography, there's a whole sort of world out there, examples that you sort of see from other photographers and Amateur Photographer magazine. You sort of buy these magazines and you're trying to work out what this medium means and what it is to be a photographer. So, of course, I literally photographed everything. I remember my brother was into taxidermy, and he was really, really poor at it.
That's such a creepy hobby.
Yeah, he was making these, he was stuffing these animals that he'd shot, and I remember he sort of badly stuffed this squirrel, and I was sort of attempting to sort of take a pseudo kind of wildlife photograph, and I sort of nailed it to this tree and sort of tried to make it look as though I got this amazing picture of a squirrel. But I mean, that just popped into my head. Yeah, it looked completely ridiculous. It had a very startled expression, and it was clearly a dead squirrel.
Picture?
I'd no way. I would have thrown it out.
Oh,
it was years and years ago.
What a shame. Okay, moving on.
So yes, you know, all landscapes I've shot, you know, everything.
Animals.
You know,
yeah.
Animals. In fact, we should do a video about it. I mean, I've actually had my work on page 3 of The Sun. So I've done a page 3 of The Sun, which came because I was photographing Zoe Ball for Esquire magazine. And Esquire would release the photographs in order to generate publicity for the shoot. And The Sun used it on page 3 of The Sun. And it said, Zoe's alive and dripping, because she was on Alive and Kicking, which is a children's program. So really, when you start, you have to do everything, anything that people will throw at you. So I've done still lives, everything.
Yeah. Okay. Biggest missed opportunity as far as someone you could have, but didn't end up photographing.
Well, the obvious one that comes to mind is that in around 2011, when Florian was a baby,
your youngest child,
my youngest child, Tatler contacted me and asked if I would go to Scotland to photograph Donald Trump. And it's really unlike me, but I just split up with your mum, and I had this new baby, and I was sort of very mindful of my priorities. And I turned it down, and it might have been a really difficult shoot, and I might not have got anything, but you do wonder what if. It would have been a great opportunity, especially given, you know, what's happened subsequently. And it would have been a nice location as well, because I would have flown up it was over the weekend, and I felt like I had to kind of, you know, do my bit as a dad. And so I passed.
Can you rattle off any other potential subjects you missed?
Yes, one other quick one. I remember photographing this guy called Earl the Pearl Strickland, who was the best pool player in the world. Right. And in the corner of this Essex pool hall, where in the dark, in the smoke, I saw a very, very young Ronnie O'Sullivan, and it was already he was already tipped for greatness, and everyone was, you know, there was an aura about him. You know, he had something going on. And basically, I asked Barry Hearn, I think it was, if I could photograph Ronnie. He was very good looking as well, really photogenic. and
Yeah.
he didn't want to be photographed. But that would have been really great. I should have just
Well,
gone up and
amazing.
taken a picture. But I was actually photographing a guy who's a great pool player. So I got that's what I was there to do. So that would have been, but it would have been a nice little icing on the cake to get Ronnie, because I'm a snooker player and I love snooker. So
Yeah. They say snooker's a sign of being good at snooker's a sign of a misspent youth.
indeed, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, we've
Would you
talked about
agree?
that, and
Okay.
Plymouth College of Art and Design, and me spending too much time at the snooker hall on
At the
Union
pub.
Street. Yeah, not in the pub, snooker hall. But no, I love it. It's a very engrossing game. It's
Yeah, for sure.
it's almost meditative, and it's there's some very interesting fans of snooker. So, for instance, Damien Hirst is who I've photographed a few times, is a good friend of Ronnie's, and accompanies him, which I'd love to do. When Ronnie's in the World Championship, Damien Hirst is in the audience, and I can see why, because it's just a very engrossing sport. Not everyone's cup of tea. I'm sure in the comments there'll be people who find it really tedious and boring. So
Yeah. Okay. Would you ever go? This is from Thomas Steiner?
Tuchel.
No, Thomas, stop with the football. Tom Steiner, I guess. Would you ever go back to shooting film on a daily basis? We've spoken about this a few times.
Yeah, absolutely not. No, I mean, if what you do, I mean, no, I don't mean to disrespect anyone, and I know that people get a lot of joy from playing vinyl records. It's the same kind of concept, really. But shooting on film now, with modern sensors being what they are, if an important part of what you do is a soon-to-be redundant technique, yeah, you need to question what it is you're doing. That's my take on it. I mean, and I have, it's not like I completely turned my back on film. I did go back and used film for my Single Dads project, and there would be something in shooting on 10:8 film, possibly. But in answer to the question, no, I wouldn't go back because it's just too difficult to use. And I wouldn't want to be trying to compete against myself, shooting against myself using a digital camera, or shooting against competing with other photographers that were using digital. I wouldn't like to compete with them having to shoot on film, because it's laborious and it's a step backwards.
Yeah. Okay, and so this is from Paul Belly Photography. If you had to shoot another niche in photography, what would it be and why? So if you had to dedicate yourself, as you have, to portrait photography, what niche would you choose?
If I hadn't done portrait photography,
If you hadn't, you're not allowed to choose portrait photography. You need a brand new niche which you've got to dedicate yourself to.
Well, I don't know. I think I naturally gravitated towards something that actually, I was leaning into my strengths, because I'm a sort of a person that likes to connect with other human beings and so on, and I'm a talker maybe. Yeah. But I will flag someone else up that I'd like to get on the channel at some time, who made a huge pivot and has been remarkably successful, and that's Levon Biss.
Yeah.
And I've already contacted him, and he's up for actually doing an interview. And he was a brilliant portrait photographer. We had the same agent, and then he became a photographer of the minutiae world of insects, and was so successful and so brilliant in these sorts of, they were kind of compositions, because he photographed the insects in different parts and then comped them together and produced these enormous files it was a technically virtuoso sort of exercise. And the pictures are extraordinary, so we'll do a link to his stuff. But if I was going to switch from doing portraits to something else, maybe it might be something unexpected like that. I mean, I remember when I first moved down to Devon, we had these fly papers, and I noticed that these fly papers were backlit, and they had these sort of dead flies on them that were kind of very melodramatic, and I did sort of get a macro lens and photograph these flies against the orange of these fly papers. So it's a bit like Levon, but much, I guess, more expressionistic. I mean, his stuff is very forensic and done with microscopes and so on.
Yeah, it's incredible.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
But
and these huge prints, like.
Yeah, definitely.
Okay, When you shot film, did you and other professional photographers ever develop or print your own photos?
Yeah, I mean, I printed all my own black and white at the beginning. I had a darkroom in every place I lived from when I became a photographer. Really, initially it was in one of my dad's pig sheds on the farm when I was growing up. We created a little darkroom, and then I'd be washing the prints in the. There was water coming off the hill, so some of those prints are sort of not that archival. They're sort of yellowing now, about 30 years later, but it's really lovely, peaceful time. I mean, the only caveat that I would say is that you're obviously dealing with carcinogenic chemicals sometimes. Some of the heavy metals, like in selenium, toner, and you'd use chemicals like ferricyanide reducer to reduce the density of negatives and stuff. The more deep you get into it, the more problems you can have. And there have been famous printers that I can't think of names off the top of my head, but people I've known. In fact, Jeremy Ramsden was my color printer, and he died quite young. He was a brilliant color printer. I don't think it's very healthy actually being in the darkroom and breathing in those fumes and stuff.
Imagine.
And whether that played a part in his relatively early demise, it's difficult to kind of separate causation from correlation.
So is there a real skill when it comes to developing and printing then?
Yeah, not so much the actual the chemistry, but actually exposing the paper, and there's a lot. It's a real craft, definitely.
Yeah. Oh.
Yeah, I mean, Jeremy was a brilliant printer, and you form a very close relationship with your printers. And David Robinson was another really good photographer as well.
It's quite sad that this whole ecosystem's redundant, I guess.
Yeah, but I have mixed feelings because there are environmental concerns with the chemistry, and there is also it's not healthy sort of being in a darkroom, even if it's relatively well ventilated, with some of these chemicals, you know.
Yeah. Okay. That was from Barry Mayfield. Thanks, Barry.
Good question.
Another one from Tom Steiner. Would you ever go back to... Oh, no, you sent me the same picture again, Dad.
Yeah, I had to make sure. Sorry.
What
an idiot.
Could you express your own style of photography on such an eclectic mix of subjects?
I would say my photographs are really examples of me finding a place that has sort of piques my interest, that has a sort of atmosphere, a kind of feng shui, something that is unnerving, and then me often putting someone into that space, providing that space has a sort of interesting light falling on it, and then recording what happens on the day. I mean, having said that, you know, sometimes you have to work with what you've got, and so you have to light or create something out of nothing. But at its purest form, and the way that I most enjoy just responding and actually finding ready-mades, places that kind of I don't have to do too much to. They just have kind of an inherent interest to me, and then I'm utilizing that. So it's a very natural and not overly complicated process. It's very instinctive, and I sort of trust my judgment, and I try not to interrogate too deeply why I sort of feel the way I do. I can think about that later on.
Okay. What does a portrait tell us?
A portrait, like all photography, is it's authored, so it's always worth bearing in mind that the photographer has a whole absolute, you know, is just laden down with baggage, you know, preconceived ideas, all these kind of things that make a person who they are. And a portrait really says more. This is what Oscar Wilde said. A portrait says more about the painter or the photographer than the sitter. So it's your perspective, all your kind of biases, all your kind of deep, dark kind of compulsions are there. You know, if you're a good photographer and you can express them, if you're kind of aping other people's photography, you know, it's less clear what a portrait is. But I mean, in its simplest, the simplest definition that I like, which is I think Diane Arbus or Diane Arbus first came up with this sort of maxim that a portrait is a record of the relationship you have with the person on the day. But fundamentally, I would always sort of emphasize that photographs are authored by the photographer at best.
Yep. Cool. Well, thank you, Jake, for that one. Jake Walters Studio. We've got one from 9pine9. What's the largest group of people you've had to photograph, and what was your approach?
Well,
That's an interesting
actual group shots. I remember when I first started, I worked for the trade magazine Campaign, and I remember I had to photograph a whole advertising agency, and they were all down the pub. I think it must have been just before Christmas, and so they were all spilled out into the road and everything. And I remember getting up high and actually getting a shot of them in the street and barking orders and directing them. And there have been other occasions when I've sort of been in a situation where there's too many people to kind of direct. And then there are occasions where I literally had to photograph over 3 days all these people that had connections with the Royal Court Theatre. I mean, It was an amazing opportunity to photograph all these actors, writers, and directors. Like Kevin Spacey, Anna Friel, really people that have gone on as well to be really famous. Ben Whishaw, and I did loads and loads of group shots within that, but they were small group shots. Gotcha. But there have been, I can't think of off the top of my head apart from that one day for that campaign shoot. But I'm sure there are instances where I've had to, I can sort of feel viscerally the anxious the actual feeling of being sort of having a big group and then there's people within the group who are messing around and stuff. Before we move on, I've just thought of one. I did a really nice portrait of I think they were called Assemble, and they were an architectural practice that consisted of loads and loads of very bright, talented young people who all had different skills, and they were all like a bunch of hipsters, really. And they had this amazing building in East London, and I had to direct them, and I did a really nice group shot of them. But it does happen from time to time.
Sounds good. Okay, thank you, 9pine9. We got one from Art Bert Sev. I'm butchering these names, but have you ever photographed foreign celebrities, so someone who doesn't speak English? And how did you manage that?
Yeah, I mean, I remember from time to time. I mean, I remember doing Enrique Iglesias over in Rome, and he didn't speak fantastic English, or maybe he did.
A massive Bollywood actor as well, didn't you? I've seen.
That's right. Yeah, I shot a cover of Time magazine, and he was the Tom Cruise. I should remember his name actually, because in Asia he's a sort of superstar. Yeah. He's bigger than Tom Cruise in Asia. Khan. But we'll flash it up. But basically, he didn't. That's a great example because he didn't really speak much English at all.
They're quite good pictures I found anyway.
He may have been shy, but I mean, the answer to that, I mean, it doesn't necessarily mean that you can't get a good picture, but you kind of find other ways, non-verbal communication in order to get your picture, and they're there, and they're fully aware of why they're there, so it's not so insurmountable.
Cool. Yeah. Thank you from Art Bert Sev. Mr. B Pictures here. Did you ever, and do you still get nervous before a shoot? You were definitely nervous before, like, I guess, Keir Starmer.
Well, no, I was and I wasn't.
Maybe it's not nervous, it's like stress. Like,
it's more let the dog see the rabbit kind of thing. I just, I've come up to London, I've had to get you organised. I have to sort of get to the location, lots of investment, a lot of time and energy has gone into that moment that that everything has led up to that. And so it's more about feeling a sense of determination that I should get something out of this opportunity. It's very rare that I'm sort of actually intimidated by other human beings because I'm too long in the tooth, So I definitely would have been when I was younger, and we talk about that, in that video with that director at the Barbican where I had the nosebleed. I was really stressed.
Christoph Penderecki.
Yeah, I mean, now those days are over. I sort of am much more relaxed about it. So I can't remember when I would last have been really intimidated.
You still feel like relief, though. I feel like when a big shoot's done.
It's more. It was the same with Lim Barber. She's older than me, who we've interviewed. That's what struck me about her and why she's so successful is that even towards the sort of autumn years of her career and her life, she's still a tiger. She's still determined. She's still very professional. And, I have a professional pride. I still want to, get an email back from the picture department that says, I can't believe you did so well. Like with Jeremy Clarkson, it's lovely getting a nice email back that says, you got so much. It's brilliant. Everyone's in the offices is so happy. That can't happen every time, but that's what you're going for. You want that approval. Even though I'm long in the tooth. That you still don't lose that hunger for affirmation.
Yeah, cool. Thank you for that one. And the penultimate question from Bonsall Connor: what's the best mistake you've made in photography, or the worst mistake? One mistake that.
That's an easy one. Okay. That is an easy one. The Richard Branson picture.
Right.
So the picture that there are certain pictures that you take in your career, and at the time you don't think they're of any consequence whatsoever. I mean, obviously I knew it was a big shoot. It was for American GQ. It was an opportunity and everything. And we had a stylist, and it was shot at the Virgin Airways Upper Class Lounge at Heathrow. Mm-hmm. And I was just so excited, and I was throwing so much shit at the wall, hoping something would stick. And I had all these different ideas, and one of which was, unbeknown to me, I was sort of ripping off Annie Leibovitz, who I think might have photographed someone wearing angel's wings and so on.
Right.
And the mistake was the wings that they brought along were absolutely fabulous, and because I was so nervous, and he was sort of playing with me as well, because he was sort of, he arrived, and then I had set up all these things, and he could see how invested I was in getting an amazing picture. And then he said, how long is this going to take? 5 minutes? And I was like, I was hoping that, I thought we had all day. And he was laughing at me.
Was he? What? Basically, that was a joke. He was just trolling.
Yeah, he was trolling me. And basically what happened was I was relieved and kind of like, trying to get into it. And I didn't notice that he put the wings on upside down. I must have told you this story.
No, I don't think so.
So these are angel's wings. So they should be.
I know the ones. They're like really quality though.
Yeah, the angel's wings sort of they come up round like this, don't they? And then they go down at the back. They curve down at the back. He put them on upside down, and it's so weird. And then later on, the shoot was a fantastic success. I didn't realise he'd done it. I took the picture. It looked good. And it was only when it won my first World Press Award, which is a big deal. I hadn't realised what a big deal it was when I won it. The agency I was with entered on my behalf. And I remember Steve Blogg, who was working at the agency, rang me up. I think it was like in the night. And he said, I've got fantastic news. You've won a World Press photo. And I said, do I get any money? And he said, no. And he said, most photographers, dream of winning a World Press photo, and I've been so lucky because I got another one a couple of years later with Björk. But the picture of Branson that won the World Press photo is the picture with the wings on upside down. And if he put them on the correct one, well, I think because he put them on upside down, they had pointed wings, and he looked like a sprite. He looked different, and it worked from the front. And I think if I put them on correctly, you wouldn't have been able to see them. But because they were sort of put on the wrong way, they were sticking up, and they were kind of like a little, it made it a bit different. So it was a total mistake that actually benefited me, and benefited me big style, because that picture's sort of become really famous. And when I went to America I gave a talk in Chicago, and I said to my agent, do you think, Tara, do you think you could phone up Branson's office and get me an upgrade? And he I didn't get back to me. And I got to the gate, and they upgraded me, and I turned left when I got on the plane. I went into upper class, which I've never flown upper class since. But you know, it's those sorts. That picture became a very famous picture, and you know, of somebody who's really famous. And so those sorts of.
You can't credit the wings to why it won the world press.
Well, I do. I don't think it would. I don't think it would have been as good a picture if the wings had been correctly worn.
Handed to you.
Yeah, I mean, sometimes the wind is in your sails, and it was at a time when a lot of things were going right. You know, and one thing, you know, there's always a bit of risk because you're shooting on film and you're processing and you're messing around with it. And then that was a shoot that came back, and it was just one amazing picture after another. And it was a shoot that needed to be really good because it was for American GQ, and it was a big. A lot of people saw the pictures, and it changed a lot of people's perception of me. You know, I think it helped. It really helped my career.
I can imagine. Okay, and just to finish, stadium versus punctum.
Yeah, well, luckily I'm friends with the great Jamie Windsor, and I actually re-watched his video, which actually talks about Roland Barthes, who was a philosopher rather than a photographer, and he talked about stadium and punctum, and and he basically his concept, it was a sort of philosophical musing, and he felt that there were certain things that, you know, sort of attracted you to a photograph. I mean, I'm probably butchering what he thought, but in a general way, there's a sort of generalized idea when you look at a photograph, what you understand of it, and then hidden within the photograph is this punctum, which is something that is very like an emotional punch, which actually has much more profundity and actually connects you to the photograph and makes it very, very memorable. And what leads on from this sort of philosophical kind of musing is that you looking at photographs is very subjective, because for some people this punctum will be one thing, and for other people it will be something else, and for some people a photograph might not have this kind of emotional element within it. And so I would say, in answer to the question, for me it started out being about the studium.
Yeah. Oh, it's a studium.
I think it's studium, and then now it's all about. For me, it's all about that emotional thing, and so it's also instructive, and it's an interesting book. It's from this book called Camera Lucida that he wrote, and actually anyone who's interested should watch Jamie's video because it's very instructive.
I'll put a link to it.
I mean, it's also worth pointing out that Jamie went to the Royal College of Art, and I did an OND at Plymouth College of Art and Design, so. I'm not really sufficiently educated to I didn't really go into it. I had to actually learn through Jamie. But in answer to the question, I would definitely say punctum, because for me, it's all about that emotional connection. And that's really been my journey, one of sort of understanding the medium and creating these sort of visual set pieces that have a generalized appeal, or people can understand them in a certain way. But then the pictures that really stand the test of time and resonate for me are the ones that have this sort of emotional punch.
Yeah, cool.
The punctum.
Yeah, punctum for sure. Yeah, that's the questions. That's the questions for now. Thank you so much to everyone who.
Let us know if you enjoy this format, because it's a very easy one for us to do, isn't it? And
I think if we were to do it again, we'd have to up the quality for sure. Like, we can't just have a video call. There's better ways of doing it. Film ourselves separately and then cut it together. I think that'd be the better way of doing it. But cool. Anything you want to finish on, Dad?
No, I think we're good. So cool. Should we say goodbye then?
Yeah, let's say goodbye. There you go. Stage is yours.
Well, thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed it. And I hope you learned something, Fred. You need to take more pictures. You need to take more pictures.